and the lady in her 60s having to go back to work, go get a second job. I mean, being a full-time property manager or a full-time landlord is a full-time job. Okay? And then you have to go and get another job just so that you can make the mortgage payments so that your tenants can live for free. All right, so I have an article for you today coming from Los Angeles, California, and it's going to tell you the plight of landlords out there who have been suffering through these coronavirus eviction moratoriums. Basically, California has put into place protections for tenants that are so strong that landlords have been unable to get anything to help them. So let's get into this article. The article says landlords are waiting for rent payments and some can't hold on much longer. And it's coming from the LA Times. As COVID-19 took root and jobs vanished, officials sought to avoid a wave of evictions, homelessness, and the spread of deadly disease that could result. Governments from federal to local enacted rules allowing people whose finances have been affected by the pandemic to keep their housing if they don't pay rent. The policies have been a lifesaver for many during a crisis when staying home meant staying healthy, but a year later, landlords say the rules are heaping an increasingly unfair burden on them. So these policies, a lot of politicians said that, they believed that they would help people in order to keep them in their homes during this pandemic. And the problem was that a lot of these tenants, they came up here and they had malicious intent from the very beginning. They didn't lose their jobs, they didn't face financial hardship, and they decided instead they could just stop paying their rent, nothing could be done, and they couldn't be evicted. So they took advantage of the system from the very beginning. And that's what my problem is, okay? These tenants that were doing this sort of thing, they need to be evicted and evicted immediately. And instead of letting that happen, what's happening instead is they're allowed to stay for more than a year now in these properties without paying rent. In interviews with the Times, property owners and managers said that they understood the unprecedented nature of the crisis, but that they are absorbing too much of the cost. Many said they or their clients are dipping into savings to keep properties afloat and delaying maintenance or repairs because they can't afford them. Some said they probably can't or won't hold on much longer under these circumstances. Billions of dollars in federal rent relief for both landlords and tenants have finally started to flow in recent weeks, but it's unclear how far the money will go. Now, I said in one of my previous videos that some landlords are actually turning rent relief down because the fact is they have too many stipulations on that rent relief. And I wouldn't take rent relief in those under certain terms either. So I don't blame these landlords for doing such a thing. Another thing is a lot of states have had horrible systems put together that haven't even gotten the rent relief to the landlords yet. Other states are sending the rent relief to the tenants first or only to the tenants and not sending it directly to the landlords. So this whole thing, it's a convoluted system and it's a mess, and simply put, they just need to get everything working the way it's supposed to be working again. I mean, the vaccine is out there. We have safety protocols out there. We know a lot more about the virus than we did in March of 2020 and when these eviction moratoriums began. We can get business flowing again. We can get these evictions moving. People can move and safely move into new housing if they are displaced from their current housing. So there is no reason for eviction moratoriums to continue. I am hoping something will turn around so I don't have to sell, said Beverly Rowe, who manages her family's Los Angeles triplex, an asset she is proud to have secured to ensure her parents' financial security in old age and to pass down wealth. That asset, hard-earned for many black households like hers, is now at risk. Rowe said a tenant owes $30,000 in rent payments missed over the last year. Can you imagine having a $30,000 debt owed to you? I mean, that's crazy. Now, I'm a landlord myself, and I sympathize with this lady here. She just wanted to make sure that, her parents and, her children and they could spread the wealth through her family, and they can't do that. They're probably barely holding on. $30,000 is a huge sum of money, just absolutely huge. Now, the impression everybody gets of landlords is that we're all, super rich. We're all, just rolling in dough and we're all doing absolutely great. And here's an example right here of a small minority landlord who is struggling because she is $30,000 owed in back rent. And that's absolutely crazy. The pandemic's worst effects have been felt by those who earn less, a demographic more likely to be renters as well as people of color. Its jolts to livelihood has been clear in data on lost jobs and the millions of Americans newly receiving food aid, among other indicators. Researchers have also documented the rising cost that tenants owe their landlords. Missed rent must eventually be paid back, and the long-term financial consequences for those renters. The picture has been less clear on the other end of the housing equation, how property owners who depend on rent for income have fared as their tenants have faced financial hardship. Opaque ownership structures can make it difficult to know who owns what property, for example, and some landlords are hesitant to talk openly about tenants or their own financial positions. Yeah, I mean, the truth of the matter is that, yeah, we know that there are tenants that are actually out there struggling. But we also know that tenants are getting rent assistance. We also know that tenants have gotten unemployment benefits if they lost their jobs, and there was extra supplemental unemployment benefits that were given. We also know that there have been 3 separate stimuluses passed. 3, okay? And tax time has come, and for low-income tenants, lots of them get large tax returns. So out of all of those things, if a tenant was still unable to pay a landlord anything, then they're just not willing to pay. It's not that they were actually in financial hardship, it's that they are trying to abuse the system and get away with free rent for as long as possible. Several landlords interviewed by The Times asked not to be named, saying they feared that their comments would upset their tenants or the local authorities passing and enforcing tenant protections. One property owner in her 60s said she is considering taking a second job to avoid having to sell her 2 20-unit buildings because she's having difficulty keeping up with the mortgage payments. An owner in his 80s said he's already told his lender he can no longer meet payments and anticipates handing the 200 units he owns back to the bank. Now, that's some of the worst case scenario right there. You know, having to give your property back to the bank, that's like a foreclosure, and this guy, he's 80 years old, so, he depends on it as his retirement income probably, and the lady in her 60s having to go back to work, go get a second job. I mean, being a full-time property manager or a full-time landlord is a full-time job. Okay? And then you have to go and get another job just so that you can make the mortgage payments so that your tenants can live for free. That is outrageous, and that's the only thing I can say about it. A new survey published Monday by researchers from the University of Pennsylvania offers more specific insight into the pandemic's effects on landlords in LA. More than half of 1,300 property owners surveyed in December last year said their business would face financial distress within 6 months if their situations didn't improve. The poll found that, compared with before the pandemic, more owners are facing delinquent rent payments and problems filling vacancies. That, in turn, has challenged their ability to pay their mortgage, property taxes, and the costs of building upkeep. Yeah, those are the hidden costs that people don't realize, okay? We don't receive a rent payment and we still have to pay our property taxes. We still have to pay our insurance. We still have to pay for building maintenance. We still have to pay for capital expenditures. In some cases, people still have to pay for utilities for the tenants and, lawn service, etc. and on and on and on. Okay, buildings are not kept for free, even with mortgage forbearance. Okay, there's no free ride for anybody. The survey results show the ripple effect that missed payments from tenants can have on landlords' ability to maintain their properties, and in some cases, their main source of income. There clearly is a lot of challenges being faced by property owners, said Vincent Reyna, the survey's co-author. The research is part of a collaboration between the Housing Initiative at Penn and 6 cities to analyze how local governments are responding to housing challenges brought on by the pandemic. The poll left the definition of financial distress open, but listed some examples: needing to sell assets, reduce services or lay off staff, or being unable to pay mortgage or property taxes. In December, nearly 29% of those surveyed said they would reach that level of financial distress in less than 3 months. Wow, that's amazing. Less than 3 months, and a lot of these landlords are just going to be put out of business. That's what it sounds like right there. And That's the truth. Okay, so this is a pretty long article. I'm not going to read the rest of it, but you get the gist of it. Landlords all over the country, but especially in places like LA, are suffering, and they're not going to make it through this pandemic unless they get help immediately.